Hello guys, Raven here and welcome back to another guide video. Now in the video I posted last week, I talked about some of the combat tips and tricks you can use to enhance your hunting efficiency and to finish your quests faster, and one of those tips was to use the Slinger Ammo to your advantage. However, in that video I only talked about one or two types. I didn't go into detail, so for today's video I wanted to give you a rundown or on some of the useful ones, at least in my opinion, and give you some situations where they can be most useful for you. So yeah, let's get started. So the first one I want to talk about is the Dung Pods. Now this is really helpful, especially if you're fighting something that travels in a pack, or something that has a good synergy with another monster. Like for example, if you're fighting Doshagumas and they are in their pack, or if you're fighting Hirabami, or if you're fighting Yankutku, it's really a bad idea to fight multiple monsters at once, no matter how good you are, and it can make your life difficult. So you can use the Dung Pod to separate them and keep the fight in your control. Another way you can use it is if you're fighting something like Rathian, and every time you fight a Rathian with the Rathalos in the map, sometime he will show up to the fight and they will both double team you. So you can use the Dung Pod to separate them and just focus on one monster. The second one is another quality of life Slinger Ammo, which is the luring pods. Now this has two uses. The first one is to use it when you're fighting to lure other monsters to fight the monster you're currently fighting, and give you the option to use them to do damage to each other, and sometimes you can sneak in another sneak attack. And the second one is the one I use the most, is to prevent monsters from changing locations often, especially if they're about to die. If you're fighting something and you can see the skull on the minimap that indicates they are capturable or they are about to die, they will normally go back to their location or to their nest. So to prevent it from going there and capture it on the spot, you can shoot the luring pod on it, and it will regain focus on you, and it will stay in that area, and then you can capture it. Or if you can do a lot of damage in a short period of time, you can kill it right there. Okay, now we move to the ones that will either do damage to the monsters or help you do damage yourself. And the first one, my favorite one, the flash pods. I have this in every single item loadout, or most item loadouts. I have it in almost every fight, because every monster in the game, except for 4, can be affected by it, and it has multiple useful situations, but the most useful one, and the one I use it the most in, is when I'm fighting something that flies, something that likes to go in the air and keep launching projectiles at me, like Rathalos or Hirabami, for example. So I just use it, drop them down, and do damage. You have to keep in mind, after a few uses, 3 uses, the monsters will be resistant to it, or they will no longer fall when you use it. So after the third one, the fourth time they will land, they will keep attacking, but they will not see you, of course. So you have to reposition yourself and do damage. And also the duration will be shorter every time you use it. Now the next one is really similar to the flash pods, but it's really difficult to pull off. Now if you don't have any more flash pods, or you can't use them, or the monster is immune to them now, there is the Brightmoss. The only difficulty about the Brightmoss is that you have to land it on the face. But if you do, you can still drop the monster down and you can do damage. This is why I said it's really similar to the flash pods, but you really have to aim it on the face of the monster, and sometimes that can be difficult. Now the next one is the Screamer pods, or the Sonic bombs. So far there isn't many monsters who are weak to it. There's only 2, Yankutku and Balahara. And in the case of Balahara, for example, every time he goes underground, you can use it to bring him back up, and he will be stunned for a few seconds, and then you can just damage him. The other use is in some of the story quests. I believe it's a side quest where you have to capture an endemic life. It will be useful for you. And maybe in the future, when they add new monsters, or they bring back monsters from the old games like Diablos, who like to go underground a lot, so this will be very useful against. Now the next one is to use a special type of Slinger Ammo that's like, for example, the heavy piercing pods, the heavy slicing pods, the heavy burst pods. And these drop from breaking monster parts. Sometimes, let's say you're fighting Hirabami, you break its tail claw, you can get a heavy slicing pod, and you can use it to drop them to shoot it in the face and drop it from the sky. And another way of getting these is when you're fighting tempered monsters, you can break the purple wound, or you can focus strike the purple wound, and they will drop something called battle remains. And the battle remains will have one of these three I mentioned. These are really helpful. They will do damage to the monster, and sometimes they can knock them down, especially if they're flying, and giving you the option to do more damage. The next one I didn't want to include. It's situational. It only works against one monster, but it's really useful, especially when you're fighting him. And it's the grounding pods. Now they are really helpful when you're fighting Redao, especially when he is in the last stage of his life. He will go back to his nest, and you can see the ground beneath you has some kind of an electrical current. And every single time he does an attack, you can see the chain reaction happen after it. So if you dodge, you can still get hit by the chain reaction. And you can see his attacks, the shock attacks, the electric attacks, they have a bigger AoE. So to deal with this, you can see that the grounding pods on the right below the pillar you can drop on his head. You can use them to shoot the ground around you, to remove the effect and to dispel the effect that it has, so that you no longer have to worry about the bigger AoE or the continuous chain attacks. Now the last one is the elemental pods. And I admit, at the start of the game, I didn't care much for it. I ignored it. I just felt it wasn't that useful until I got to the ruins of Riveria, and until I got to the Guardians fights. Now, when you're fighting the Guardians, some of their attacks will create white pillars, and if these pillars are not destroyed, they will use the elemental attacks to damage you with it. Unless if you use elemental ammo or elemental slinger ammo to shoot them and create and damage the monsters yourself. So for example, if you're fighting Rathalos, when he dives and he slides on the ground, he creates those white pillars. He will shoot them with a fireball, and then they will ignite and explode. So even though you dodge the fireball, they can just catch you off guard sometimes. Same thing with Anjanath, when he does the bite and he ignites everything around him with electricity, they can catch the electricity and damage you. So if you have elemental ammo, you can shoot these as soon as they spawn and do the elemental damage to the monster themselves. These are the ones that I think that are more useful. There are other types of slinger ammo. I just didn't find them useful for me. But if I'm wrong about them, make sure you leave a comment. And I hope you learned something new. I hope you use these and they help you as well. And yeah, thank you for watching, and happy hunting.